3, 2, 1.
So Maggie and I were driving the other day, and it was a nice little drive. We had music on. I was hanging my head out the window like a dog. My hair was down.
Tongue flapping.
And then I saw something, and it ruined my whole day. We drove past a P.F. Chang's. I don't know if you've had the pleasure lately, Tristan. Tristan's here, by the way.
Yeah, P.F. Chang's is great. Why did that ruin your day?
Because they've changed P.F. Chang's.
Is there not a horse in the front anymore?
They've ruined the horse, Tristan.
Wait, did they really? They did something to the horse?
They painted the horses.
What?
They painted them.
They're gold.
They're clumsy
that's
and painted.
so tacky.
Yes.
Bad.
It's not classic and eternal. It's not a proud horse with a nice flowing, muscular, golden body.
Oh, weird.
It's just this dopey, finger-painted pony.
Maggie, is this the part where you employ your art history stuff?
No,
It's like, well, actually,
No, yeah, I can't even-
the marble statues used to be painted in color.
I've decided not to get into that because it'll upset Cam even more.
So all sculptures used to suck?
No, that's not what that means.
It's like when you were in daycare or did like a pre-K project where you got some sort of a clay thing that was just totally stark white, and then you got the watercolors and it's just ugly, and maybe there's glitter in there. I feel like that's what all of the Greek statues used to look like.
That means Caesar was a dork.
Yeah,
He had just dumb
Of
paint.
course he was.
deserved to die.
I'm going to say it.
He earned it.
He just
Controversial opinion.
He had stage makeup on when he was gutted.
Oh, no. I'm really sorry that the horses ruined your day, Cam.
Yeah, I can never eat at that establishment again.
Well, did you eat there anyway?
Yes. We had lunch from them today.
Oh, okay. A man of principle.
The 2-day turnaround.
The reason we had it for lunch today was because we ate with my parents last night, and we had Chinese, and we took our leftovers home. We forgot to put them. Cam forgot to put them in the fridge last night, and this morning we saw them. We were like, no.
I mean, we lost it.
So we had to
really
get-
wanted Chinese
We really
food.
wanted Chinese,
Yes,
so we had
I
to
see.
go replenish. It was tragic. It was really sad, and we had to
I
brave
see.
the horses.
Well, did it
instead.
taste any better after they painted the horse?
I didn't
I
notice
think the
difference,
fact
though.
that we brought it home helped. If I'd been there, it would have tasted wrong.
seeing
I
the
see.
horses.
Just making eye contact.
You know what's funny? I think they recently did get a new CEO. So that may be his doing.
Well,
That's
now we know who to-
It's a little gauche for me.
He's not invited on the podcast.
I guess not.
Speaking
So-
of horses,
We're here to talk about Mark Twain. Obviously, we're a couple minutes into that.
there is a
fantastic
connection.
opening.
I promise. There are horses in this story.
So I found this little Mark Twain short story. It's only like 400 words, and the man wrote a lot. And I've found a bunch of amazing little things he's written, and I'm going to bring more of them to the show. But this one felt so relevant to the conversations we have about artistic interpretation, subjectivity, and especially adaptation. But I didn't want to just like drop you guys a PDF and have you have to just read the thing, because that really just felt like giving the audience homework. So I recorded a version of it, and that'll be up on our YouTube channel right now. There'll be a link in the episode description. So if you don't, by chance, already know this Mark Twain short story, 4 minutes and 14 seconds on YouTube. It's got some little artwork that I did, and it's fully captioned. So if you're not an audiobook person, there's like training wheels there. You'll be totally
Well,
fine.
I read it, and in the group project of life, listeners, feel free to lean back and let us do the work for you.
There you go.
Yeah, it's good. So basically, it's about a group of animals, and they're trying to discuss this painting. And the artist puts up a painting, and there's a mirror, and the painting's on the other side. And it's about them dealing with that situation and interpreting it and looking at it and sort of getting in the way of it. And there's this moral at the end that one of the animals provides. And I want to read it out just because I think it's a good framework for the discussion.
The moral, not the whole story.
Right.
Yes.
The moral, yeah, I already did that part. The moral is you can find in a text whatever you bring if you will stand between it and the mirror of your imagination. You may not see your ears, but they will be there.
Nice.
So just as to sort of open it up to you guys, what did you think of the story, and what did you think it was relevant to for the kind of stuff we've talked about?
Well, I really liked the story. To me, it felt like something you could write. It just had that there's a bit of humor to it and lightness with a serious message in there. Plus all the talking animals. Cam writes oh my God. Cam writes a lot with talking animals.
Glowing endorsement.
Holy shit. I haven't talked much today. I'm sorry. I worked from home, so I didn't speak to many people today. But so, and I liked, it felt relevant, not necessarily for what we talk about. I mean, it did, but it really resonated with me because I work in an art museum and I'm always talking in education, and I'm always talking to visitors about what we bring to the table when we look at art and how that affects our interpretation and how that's a necessary part of interpretation. You can't just look at art objectively and not include yourself in there. I mean, you can be thoughtful about what you bring into your visual experience and interpretation and how much of your own experience and opinion you're letting in, but it's always going to be there. And I don't think we should aim to not include ourselves in the way we look at something. So that's what I was really thinking about when I saw this, because the in the story, each animal comes back and says, like the dog comes back and says, I saw a dog, and the donkey says, I saw a donkey. Like they all saw themselves without realizing it. And I thought, what's wrong with that though?
Oh, interesting.
Like, I mean, I get the point of the story, but I was like, well, that's not necessarily bad. Like they all saw something different and that's okay.
But they saw it at the expense of seeing the actual work of art.
Yes. And that's where it gets to be too much. So so that's what the main thing I thought about.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the morals, simplicity, right, sort of belies its complexity, because, it's just, basically, okay, well, yeah, you're going to see whatever it is that you see. It's going to be sort of personal to you. But there is this undertone of, is it right? I mean, what you're dealing with is actively seeing something that the artist did not intend. And I'm not sure if there's really a value judgment being made by Twain here. I'm not sure if he's saying that, if he's cautioning against doing that because you'll get in the way of what the artist is trying to convey to you, or if he's saying, hey, this is going to happen regardless, just be aware of it, and maybe that'll help you sort of get through and sort of try to look past your own reflection in this case, see beyond what exactly you're bringing to the table, or maybe use it as a guide to magnify and be able to explore why maybe you're interpreting it in a certain way.
Yeah, I agree, because it seems like his message is the animals are not recognizing what's getting in the way. They're not recognizing that they're seeing themselves. They think I'm seeing another donkey or horse or whatever. So they're not aware of that problem or that condition, and so they don't know how to keep it measured and intentional.
I really like that point. The question I was asking myself when I was trying to draw up notes about this was, I was trying to zoom out because, like you said, the moral is kind of wound through the whole thing. But that word moral feels so loaded. Mm-hmm. Like when I think of the term morality play, I think of shitty art. Because, back to like Plato advocated for like all art basically should be responsible morality plays. And I've always thought that was asinine. I think creative expression is good regardless, and I like that it's uncomfortable and ugly and dirty and subversive. I think that's usually the best art. I don't like just clean advice, like I'm being preached at. People don't like that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We'll post a link to the Terrifier episode.
Exactly.
But like for using such a heavy word, for having a signpost of moral at the end of the story, I love that point, Tristan, because it is maybe gentle advice. Like it's really not prescribing anything. And the question I was asking is, why are the people viewing the art, the readers, the listeners, the audience members, basically, regardless of the medium, why are those people depicted as animals while the artist remains human? And the thing that maybe solved that little riddle in my head was that the human remains absent and unseen. He is so not the focus of this. This really isn't about that. It's about how things are received and chewed up by that audience. And by turning them all into animals who don't have names, one of them kind of does, but not really, it broadens the characterization of the audience without having any sort of like demographic specifics, which means that Mark Twain gets to make a larger critique and sort of control for irrelevant variables. So he's speaking to a shared universal humanity, and this is a society-wide phenomenon. But by depersonalizing it like that, you give the reader a little distance from it. Because if the characters if it was like a white woman, a black man, an Asian, like people would immediately identify with the animal that they would think represents them, right? But by not specifying gender and race in that way, you don't distract or obscure the actual message of the story, and you don't get the critique of, so you're saying that all white women, like you don't get that. But you also make sure the reader isn't overly invested or defensive as he presents this pretty neutral scenario. And that just little bit of distance might give the reader a chance to see the situation more fully. And like you said, Tristan, that opportunity for reflection or maybe discomfort at where you are in that situation, it's him living up to the moral at the end of the story, because he's making space for the reader to see his work of art, this story, instead of just seeing themselves.
Yeah.
Nice.
And there's also, apart from the, like, spot on the moral of the story, right? There's also an underlying sort of satire or, lambasting of the tendency that we have to allow a critic or somebody with an opinion about art to sort of guide the conversation and interpret how the art is supposed to be interpreted. We're introduced to the setup, right? The painting that's set up across from a mirror so that it reflects, and the artist says he liked it there because it was like doubly beautiful or whatever. And so he has these very simple reasons for setting it up that way, and he likes it like that. And then the whole reason that this art becomes a thing and the animals go to look at it is because the artist's cat sees it and then goes and disseminates it out to his other animal friends. And Twain points out that all of the animals thought the cat was popular. They liked him. They thought he was an intelligent guy and like knew what was going on, so they wanted to listen to him. But then whenever the cat goes to explain what the work of art is, he's like, he says that the mirror is actually a hole in the wall.
Yeah, he misunderstands what a mirror is.
Exactly. And then the entire rest of the story is based upon that misconception, right? They're totally talking about the wrong thing, and they do not know what the art actually is, but they've decided that it is a thing, the wrong thing, and that informs the rest of their discussion and sometimes argument about what it is. And like the whole time, this is sort of taken on a life of its own, and you've lost the actual meaning of the art to begin with. Not even just the meaning, just what it is at all. And that's sort of seeing that initial mistake guide the conversation and dominate what the discourse ends up being about that art is, I think, that's really prescient today, because that's what happens. I mean, you've got people with a platform, all of the successors to BuzzFeed and all of that stuff, Vulture, and, Vox, and you've got these platforms where people who have opinions, can stand up there and shout them to their followers. And they sort of dictate what's good and what's bad. Oh, the movie that came out last week, super good. Black Adam, The Rock, you're trying, but it's not good enough.
Right.
All of that kind of stuff, and maybe the idea being that a lot of the discourse goes in a way that was never ever intended and misses the point of what the art is.
Right.
I think that is still incredibly prevalent and poignant for now.
Yeah. And then people will go into, watching the movie, watching the show, looking at the thing having already decided what they think of it because somebody with a platform has already decided for them.
The tastemakers.
And so it completely affects and informs their experience of that work.
Yeah,
and
because even though they're seeing different things in this story, they're all seeing the same different thing, which is an animal.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This was a painting and is a mirror, but despite their differing opinions, they all come from the same like tree. Right, they all branch off from the same general concept of you're seeing an animal here.
And there's such an arrogance to it. I thought this was sort of a subtle, like you said, sort of a critique of it. I loved that, and I only caught this like reviewing my notes because I don't think it's obvious. And this is why I think Twain is such a good writer, because he works with such simple language, but there's such depth and provocation to it. I mean, to the point that it's better satire about today than anything made today. But I love the fact that the animals all see themselves in this, supposed painting or work of art, and they immediately accept that they are works of art. None of them question that. And it's like the tastemaker thing for the cat being sort of the influencer who introduces it. They describe him as learned, refined, civilized, polite, high-bred, and he has such condescension speaking down to them. And it's not that they just kill him. It's that condescension, which I imagine makes them a little insecure, it becomes infectious. And by the end of the story, 400 words later, the elephant is, furious with the moral and mental blindness of the other animals. Like, as diverse opinions are offered, disagreements emerge and everyone hardens in their position. You see that like agitation or aggravation. I like how one person being really aggressive and nasty and definitive about interpreting a work of art can just lock everyone down, and that reproduces itself. I had never really thought about it like that. Like if a political commentator on the right says a movie that's coming out is terrible and they're shoving a message down our throats, and blah, 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 half the people are going to get mad at it. But then if you're on the left and you see that guy said something about the movie, you might have a knee-jerk reaction in the other way and just support the movie. And like it because the wrong people don't like it. Like it's such a great way to frame that sensation.
Totally. Yeah. It's playing into our natural need to combat each other and have different sides of things. It makes sense.
Do you see that in museums?
I haven't. No. Like,
You
no.
ever have someone walk in and just yell about the painting? That is not what
Honestly,
it is.
most of the time, the people that I'm working with, the groups I'm working with, I really try to facilitate it, like, equal, like everyone has their own opinions discussion.
Right.
But people are really insecure about interpreting art in front of other people. And when somebody has one opinion and notices something, the tendency is for everyone else to go, oh yeah, like, and like, oh, I should have gotten that. I'm stupid for not getting that. And so there's like a discomfort and an insecurity. I really try to discourage that type of thinking and encourage, like, well, that's interesting that you see that. What do you see? But that's in a really different situation. Like, that's not online. That's not like, it's usually like a group of college kids or younger. But it's people wanting to be polite and not seem stupid.
In that situation, the cat would be the tour guide.
Right. Yes.
And no one's going to disagree with the tour guide if they say, this is what the painting means.
Which is also why I try not to
exactly
say, this is, I never say this is what the painting means. That's never what I do.
Well, a few months ago, we went to that museum, and we did. There was one guide who came in, unsolicited and was like, hey, this picture is this. And I'm thinking, cool. It's not what I thought. But
not my museum, a different museum we were at.
Yeah,
I was
not your museum.
No one did that at mine.
No. Yeah,
okay,
no.
Gotcha. Yeah. I do remember that.
Yeah, so I mean, we had enough. We had a lot to talk about for a lot of those works of art, but that's also what we went to school and were encouraged to do.
Right.
We went to school for that kind of stuff. So I think we're comfortable exploring that. But I think actively, that sort of interpretation, that self-guided interpretation, it's discouraged, and so this is a sort of contradictory thing, but it's discouraged, and also we don't check it enough. So we do not encourage people actively really analyzing a situation or an item or a work. We don't there's not a reward system in place. Capitalism is not built to, give you a high five if you really think out an opinion and have something nuanced out there. But at the same time, we don't encourage doing that sort of analysis and deeper level thinking about most things, especially as far as, the humanities are related, because God knows all that we're getting artistically to the masses right now is Marvel movies.
Capitalism.
Right.
Right.
The critical thinking is at an all-time low.
Exactly. So at the same time, we don't reward that. We do reward the megaphone blasting, hyper polarized political opinions, because whether or not you agree with it or disagree with it, you're going to have strong opinions in both directions. And the whole, no press is bad press. That's what we're rewarding now. So if you're the loudest, brightest person, you're getting the attention, and the attention in this case means more views, and more views means more money. And that has sort of run amok to where, since we're not encouraging those nuanced opinions and the deeper thought behind all of that, you've got people just yelling into the void about their own poorly thought out opinion. And that's all we hear these days, because that's what gets clickbait.
That's the loudest stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like every YouTube video
Yes.
a giant red word with somebody
caps.
gasping on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was totally thinking of YouTube when you were saying that too, and I hate reviews. Like you were making fun of critics earlier, and I think that's a great point. I'm so happy that we don't call things reviews. We don't call our episodes reviews. More people would watch them. And if we shit on things all the time, more people would watch that.
Yeah, they would.
But I think we're doing something more nuanced and difficult, which is why it's not, taking over countries, why we don't make thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah, we need to start doing tier lists. We need to start ranking things.
We are breakfast cereals. But
yeah, listeners, tier list, rank your hosts.
I love that invoking capitalism as obviously like a direct idea and contributing factor, but also almost as a metaphor, because there's such an arms race, an escalation in power grab and competition here in offering their subjective opinions. Like the second time I read it, I noticed that the artist is gone after the first line.
Yeah.
Yep,
He
does
never
not appear.
There's no interpretation, there's no analysis, there's no explanation of the painting from him.
He made it, and he did it that way because he thought it was pretty.
Yeah, and it's not just that at the end we have a stated moral. It's that the moral isn't from the artist.
Right.
So that's the cat reaching for that authenticity, that objective legitimacy that the artist's opinion would have. It's like kids in school saying, well, what the author meant was, what the theme of 1984 was.
The one theme. Yeah.
And that audience subjectivity, it totally warps their reception of art. And I think you alluded to this earlier, Maggie. None of them are seeing the same painting.
Right.
They're utterly blocking out the work of art.
Right.
And just seeing their own projections and biases.
And assuming that there can only be one right way to see it.
Right.
And so the ass seeing the ass and the horse seeing the horse, they're like, well, which one is it? And
Well,
so
actually, the ass saw the hole.
Well, okay.
It was an asshole joke in this.
He did think he was
funny.
looking into a hole. It's pretty funny. Yeah. But there's no possible consideration of, we see different things. It's no, you're wrong. No, I'm right. There's must only be one theme of 1984, and I have the right one and you don't. Yeah.
That one phrase from the moral is the reason I wanted to talk about this. So I read it before, but I'm going to read it again. You can find in a text whatever you bring if you will stand between it and the mirror of your imagination. And that last phrase, the mirror of your imagination. I think that's everything I've ever tried to express about how we approach art. And how the three of us have always. I mean, I had the great pleasure of having taken college classes with both of you and seen how you approach works of art in different ways. And that mirror of your imagination, holding a work of art up to you and letting it just like a gateway just open up. It's art as a provocation, art as an invitation to thought. And if you approach a work of art with an open mind, with fairness, and more than anything else, with humility, it can and will change your life every day.
Right. Yeah, because that was the other problem, like I'm saying, these animals are having. The problem isn't that they all saw different things. It was the arrogance of assuming that the way they were seeing it was the only way. And so that, and their own arrogance, and you could even say like self-obsession, because they're just looking at themselves and won't change their, literally all they have to do is change positions, change perspectives to see the painting behind them. But they don't do that. And so it's the lack of humility that prevents them from experiencing this great thing and having this shared collective, if diverse, group experience.
Well, and then there's just this directionless anger at the fact that people are seeing a different thing than them, like from coming from the elephant, despite the fact that they're doing the same thing he is. Right? So, you know, there's a lot of that unawareness as well, that sort of, this is a thing that everybody is going to do. It's not necessarily wrong, you know, if you don't have the knowledge base to understand that it is. But they're treating it as if it's just this god-awful thing that how could anybody think something differently than I do? I know what I saw. And to their credit, that is what they saw, right? And so the lack of awareness, again, of the fact that phenomenon is going on with everybody else is, I think, another thing the moral that this story is pointing out, is that not only is it happening to you, it's happening to everybody else too. So it might sort of substantiate or help you understand why they may be having those reactions once you take that into account.
Why do you think it bothers people when other people have such a violently different reaction to something like a work of art?
I think a big reason is insecurity. Is there's a feeling that, have I gotten it wrong? Like, I felt so confident in my interpretation of this. Someone else thinks something completely different. Am I stupid? Am I wrong? Am I missing something? And some people will become really insecure and just think, oh, I must be wrong, I must be dumb, and go that route. Or they become incredibly defensive and want to, you know, feel better about themselves. And so they push back aggressively against a different opinion. And that's not always what happens, but I think that could be a big part of it.
And we can play that out too. I mean, recently you guys had a discussion on canon. There's a lot to be said for that here as well. I mean, once you see things a certain way, and somebody's sitting, if I've got a blue pen in my hand, and someone's yelling at me saying it's red, I'm gonna be like, you're kidding me, right? Like, this is a blue pen. Like, no, it's not. That is red, crimson, if you want to be precise, but it's red. I'm gonna be like, are you stupid? Like, you know. So I mean, I think that's what's going on here. Is it's so objectively true to these people. I guess maybe that's something to consider as a more simplified moral, is not understanding or taking subjectivity as objective.
Yes, right. Like, how could anybody possibly think something different than what I'm thinking?
Yeah, exactly. And assuming a universal truth where there really is none.
Yeah, like they must be lying. They must be stupid. They must not know what they're talking about. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're the animals here, then maybe if you extend the analogy, there's no way for us to understand what the original author intended, not precisely. So maybe that's it too. Maybe understanding that, hey, there's maybe not a correct answer here, but you are going to be, you know, bringing something to the table that you need to understand is informing the way that you're interpreting this. And I think that's a valuable lesson for everything.
Cam, why do you think that people get so upset with different opinions?
I'm thinking back on the thing I said earlier about humility and art changing your life and having an intense emotional reaction to something, which becomes an emotional investment. Say a work of art really starts to mean something to you. We were in the comic store the other day, and I love that they play like thematic music sometimes. You can tell it's just whoever's working that day. And they played the theme song to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio drama from the 70s. I was absolutely the only person in the room who knew that. But it hit me so hard because I haven't heard that in years. But it is such a euphoric... that series changed my life. That influenced me wanting to do narration and writing and illustrating and just all of everything in storytelling. And if someone came up to me and told me that pen was blue when I knew it was red.
Yeah.
Or if someone came into that franchise and there was some shitty soulless reboot on a third-tier streaming network, and they changed everything about the show.
Do you mean Amazon Rings of Power?
But and this is sort of the third point I wanted to talk about with the moral. I think there's a lot to be said here about this story being a way of understanding the extreme emotional reaction to unfaithful adaptations. I love the idea of almost the solar eclipse of someone standing between the art and the viewing. That like three-tiered system, because it becomes almost graffiti on the original. If it feels disrespectful, it feels corrective or obnoxious. It's like, oh, you're making a self-portrait and putting this IP's name on it, and that's not what it was. And you're engaging with that emotional investment when people are vulnerable and nostalgic. And when you twist that knife, people go nuts. Like, I was looking at all the news about The Witcher this week, and we've all talked about this, not on the show yet, but this revelation came out from this writer named Beau DeMayo, who's, I hope I got that pronunciation right, who's now the showrunner of the X-Men 97 show for Disney+. And he'd written on The Witcher show, both seasons. And he was talking about his experience in running a show versus just being a writer on one. And he was saying as a prerequisite for being hired to work on the X-Men thing, you had to love the source material. And by contrast, he said that some of the writers on the Netflix Witcher show actively disliked and mocked the source material. Which, to use the language of this short story instead of me just getting vaguely mad, they are not the right people to hold a mirror up to that story.
Yeah.
If they hate it.
Yes.
And this, I wanted to pull a quote from Beau DeMayo because I couldn't believe that this was being said publicly, because it was so... It just made me feel better, because then I wasn't the elephant who only saw the elephant.
Yeah.
He was telling me the pen was red, and his quote was, "You have to respect the work before you're allowed to add to its legacy."
Nice.
And I feel like, us doing 10 weeks of talking about House of the Dragon, like, we did that because the author was involved.
Yes, so there was respect for the source material.
It gave it that legitimacy.
Yes, and this makes us understand Henry Cavill's leaving the show, which we haven't talked about on this podcast.
Now I do wonder if, like, that sort of revelation helped him make that decision, or if it was just, big time Hollywood DC money to come back as Superman. May have been both.
He said a lot publicly that he really wants. He's kept saying, "I want them to go back to the books.
He said
be
that,
more faithful to the books," like over and over.
He said that in almost every interview, before and after and during all of the seasons. He said that all of his disagreements with the producers are trying to get them to stay faithful to the character and pull back to the character, and that he almost left after season 2 for creative differences. Like, it's absolutely this.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure the Superman money doesn't hurt.
I respect the hell out of that.
And he chased this role. He wasn't wanted for this role. He
wanted
chased it down.
Yeah.
And he had the books on set, and he was quoting things from memory to teach actors about their characters and pull it back to characterizations. He fought for scenes and for Geralt to be like he was in the books. It reminded me, and this is maybe a sort of a counterexample here, Peter Jackson talking about Lord of the Rings. And explicitly trying to keep his own ideas and thoughts and messages out of this adaptation and just tell Tolkien's story, to the point of trying to figure out what cycle the moon was in during a certain scene so it would be accurate.
And not everybody agrees with his interpretation. Not everyone thinks he got it right. But there was such a faithful attempt to hold up that mirror in the correct way.
And can you ask for more than an attempt? I mean, to go back to the Hitchhiker thing, Douglas Adams wrote the first draft. He died, unfortunately, I think before the movie was made, but he wrote the screenplay for the movie adaptation. And the movie adaptation had Martin Freeman, it had Alan Rickman, they were like perfectly cast, but the movie's atrocious.
Yeah, it's bad.
And it had the direct involvement. So all you can ask for is the attempt.
Sure.
But
yeah.
I think the very bare minimum is that you not shit on the source material.
that should be part of it.
Yeah, that's pretty tough.
Because then you're just making it all about you. You're like, well, I'm going to fix this and make it what I want.
Right.
Well, and the subtext of because I read that same article, the subtext of reading that article, like 2 weeks after the finale of the Rings of Power, I mean, it's that sort of approach that, you know, we're going to beat the hell out of this and wring all of the money that we can, regardless of whether or not we like it. It's an established IP, so this is what we have to work with. Let's see what we can do. You know, that's so soulless. And, you know, at what point, how do we decide who gets to be the bearer or the herald of the legacy of a work of art? Because by and large, I would have said that Lord of the Rings and all of that universe from Tolkien was the most sacrosanct piece of literature that you could have, right? That fan base would not allow it to sort of become perverted because they really do, people who are super into Tolkien, gatekeep that lore very hard, right?
Yeah,
you know,
they do.
if you go onto a Reddit forum or you know anywhere on the internet really that somebody you know expresses an opinion about any one of those books, you've got someone who comes on and goes, well, actually, you know,
Yeah.
And no, I don't know that fucking elves were a different type of being in the first age that had to migrate into the, like, that's really cool lore that I don't know, but the only reason that it still gets talked about is because you've got a populace that is so dedicated to that source material. And, you know, for them, especially when the Rings of Power first came out, I'm sure that felt like the ultimate betrayal.
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about canon. I mean, Amazon just held up the pen and said, this is red.
Yep.
Whenever everyone around Tolkien's legacy has enshrined this obviously blue pen into some sort of case into their home, and they pray to it.
Yeah.
You know, they know that it's a perversion of what they want, and I hate that is all too often the story. Whenever we take stories and adapt them to something that is more, you know, quote unquote mainstream, or that reaches a larger audience, it necessarily becomes a game of telephone, and you know, somebody has to decide which portions of it get watered down. But I don't understand the reasoning for that sometimes, because those works of art become popular because of what they are.
Right.
You know, adaptation necessarily makes it into something different, but I feel like you can try harder than what we see often to remain faithful to that material. And I think people are going to be okay with the fact that maybe this could be portrayed in a different way in like a visual medium or something. But I'm not watching this show because if I watch a show or a movie or listen to a book based on an IP that I've read, I am expecting to see on the screen what I previously only saw in my mind.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And like, you know, as one-to-one as you could possibly get is what I want to see.
Right. Yeah, and that's that's never
it's
going to
hard,
happen.
but like, but it also feels like we're actively eschewing that as a society in favor of seeing the big explosion or the writer's room relying on an easier trope.
And part of that is, again, sort of capitalism, because you were asking, like, who becomes the person who stewards this franchise into the future and keeps it faithful. It's no one. It's Amazon gets to do it because they have the biggest checkbook. I pulled some quotes. George R. R. Martin and Neil Gaiman were doing a talk in New York City the other day, and they were talking about this subject. I want to quote a little bit because I think it accents your point perfectly, Tristan. So George R. R. Martin says, quote, "How faithful do you have to be? Some people don't feel that they have to be faithful at all. There's this phrase that goes around, quote, "I'm going to make it my own." I hate that phrase. And I think Neil probably hates that phrase too. And Neil Gaiman goes, "I do. I spent 30 years watching people make Sandman their own, and some of those people hadn't even read Sandman to make it their own. They just flipped through a few comics or something." This is quoting from the article. I think it was IGN. While the duo agreed that the people behind adaptations often dishonor their source materials, Martin later clarified that it's impossible for adaptation to stay fully faithful. Quote, "There are changes that you have to make, or that you're called upon to make, that I think are legitimate," Martin said, "and there are other ones that are not legitimate. Why is the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones not the Iron Throne as described in the books? Why is it not 15 feet high and made of 10,000 swords? Because the ceiling in our soundstage was not 15 feet high. We couldn't fit it in there, and they weren't willing to give us St. Paul's Cathedral or Westminster Abbey to shoot our little show in."
That's the message of the Fable, right? Is you have to be able to look past your own interpretation of the thing that you read and your perfect vision and accept that it may not be exactly the same, but having those critical thinking skills and that artistic literacy to be able to tell this is being faithful in the right ways as an adaptation to the source material.
We're kind of doing right now what the animals were doing, or at least I am. I'm kind of doing that. But, you know, in having just thought that through and had those strong feelings, you know, I think we're getting back to the heart of the problem being that the cat was the one who led everybody on this interpretive, you know, goose chase, because they set the stage for what was supposed to be important about the work of art, right? And so whenever you've got a showrunner adapting material, they're acting as the cat, right? If that cat had been more informed and smarter, right, it would have known how to express to the audience, the animals, what's actually going on with the picture and tell them, hey, just not even tell them, just gently guide their view to where they're viewing it at an angle that it's supposed to be viewed at, right?
Encourage them to be mobile.
Exactly. As the conduit for how the audience interacts with a work of art, the cat failed the audience, right? And so I think that's what we get a lot of. And that's one of the, I think, the deeper criticisms of this moral is that the cat does this, sort of sows this discord, and yet the cat still comes out on top because it delivers the moral.
Yes.
It says, here is how you are supposed to view what has just happened. Not the fact that it was wrong, right? So again, it's redirecting the way that we're supposed to view this story, despite the fact that the cat is maybe not the most reliable narrator or trustworthy.
Yeah, and the cat assumed that all the other animals were going to look at the painting the way that he did.
Yeah, cat loses interest, walks off, and just says, "Oh, well, here's how you should think of this."
And that is sort of the beauty of the artist not being a part of the story, because there is there's no control. The artist has no control through any part of the story after the painting is hung. And all of the work that goes into building the mirror and holding the mirror up to the imagination of the audience, that all has to be done by other people.
Yes.
It's producers and showrunners and buying the rights. And if you're keeping it within the realm of adaptation, it's never really the author doing all of those jobs. But you want those middlemen. You want the cat to defer to the artwork instead of asserting their own image and ideas about it.
Or ideally, you build a society where you don't need the cat.
Right.
Where people know how to look at a work of art without guidance or without feeling like they need guidance.
But the absence of the artist is the thing that's hitting me right now as the tragedy of the story. Because like George R. R. Martin's alive, which is why House of the Dragon is like the fucking book he wrote. Tolkien's dead. So he has no control. He can't wrestle the mirror away from the people. He has no control at all. And I think that's that loss. If you zoom out centuries, I mean, Mark Twain can't write into the podcast and tell us we're wrong about what we're interpreting here.
Right.
It's that strange weight and pressure when you're totally detached from the original artist, when you're detached from objectivity, how do you proceed?
Right. Well, I think it's because I'm thinking about somebody like George Lucas, who has gone, we've talked about this before, has gone back into a lot of his older Star Wars movies and made changes retroactively. He's added CGI, he's changed things because he doesn't like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it has to do with how other people have reacted now, or it just has to do with, I look at that now with my 2022 eyes and I don't like how that looks. But he's feeling the need to constantly still be involved and have control versus other artists who just like set it and forget it.
Well, then he sold it to Disney, so.
Well, yeah. So at this point, he can't do it. But
like the new head of Warner Brothers came out a couple hours ago and he said, "We're all in on franchises. That's the thing now. It's been 15 years since we had a Harry Potter movie because the story ended."
Yeah, that's why it's done.
Because they ran out of books and the story
'cause the
ended.
story
We're
is
all
over.
in on franchises.
That is the cringiest.
But that
Oh my
is
gosh.
that like hellscape that you kind of laid out.
I mean, that's
Tristan.
Bezos saying, "Get me my
Yeah.
Game of Thrones." It's the same thing.
Exactly.
That's
Well, it
so
is.
gross.
I mean, and it sucks because you got to make a living, right? You've got
Those
to.
poor Warner Brothers executives.
No,
They're
no,
really
no,
pushing.
I don't mean the executives.
Yeah.
I don't mean the executives.
I know.
I mean the poor guys in the writers' room who got on with a company because they enjoyed writing, and then company goes out, buys an IP, and says, "Okay, little Timmy, you are now writing for My Little Pony. Have fun."
Yeah.
Being told to do that because it's your profession, but not, being a writer doesn't mean you can just write anything. You could maybe write this like syntactically. Your grammar's going to be good, and you might be able to tell a good story regardless of the medium. But I mean, I don't have to explain to either of you how difficult it would be to write something that has any soul that you don't care about. So writing, despite being something that you can turn into a career, is not something that, like being an accountant, you can just graft on to any other, matter and perform as well. Because you really need to be devoted to your craft to be able to do that. And I think that's one of the issues with, making that artistic endeavor into an occupation.
And there is something arrogant about creating. And I think that's part of the fun, because there's this suggestion that the world needs to hear from you on this subject, that we don't have enough stories and entertainment, that you have something new and worthy to offer. And that impulse is inherently sort of selfish. And it takes a certain blindness because you face untold amounts of rejection along the way. But that is speaking from the realm of original work. And we live in a time with democratized means. You can self-publish a book if you want. You can do an audiobook if you want. You don't have to break into Sirius XM to record a fucking audiobook now. It's a better time for a lot of that. But the work of adaptation has not changed. And I think there is a difference in attitude as a creative person if you're adapting someone else's work versus creating your own. Because you can do whatever you want for your story. But I think that idea of respect does always apply to an adaptation. Like when we talked about that Macbeth movie, the Denzel Washington, Frances McDormand one from last year, that changed massive parts of the plot. That gave, murders and deaths to different characters. It totally changed. It didn't change anything on paper, how the story ended, the major events, but it changed who was involved and why things happened. It was incredibly thoughtful and respectful. And there was that palpable passion. It didn't feel like it was trying to correct the work of art. I think there is some X factor, there's some smell test that you just know when you're working with an established property, if the person cares.
Yeah.
And the fact that I haven't seen one person on the entire internet say, Henry Cavill left, but why? He seemed so thrilled.
Yeah, they're all like, oh, yeah, makes sense.
I think that the smell test, it continues.
Yeah,
It's unbeaten.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. I thought this was such a potent short story.
It was.
I can't believe it applied to so many.
I know.
I mean, I'm quoting things from today and yesterday, and this thing's from 1909.
I know. Well, and I think that what you touched on this earlier. You said, why use animals in this? Why the moral?
Yeah.
And this is called a fable, and that's what a fable is. There is there's a story usually with animals to make it relatable, and it can apply to anybody who reads it, and you end it with this sound moral that you take home. Usually these are aimed for children. But this discussion we've just had and the different things we've pulled from it, the moral and the fable itself, I think, are very ambiguous and can be applied to different things and understood in different ways. And you could pull different messages out of this. You can pull different morals from that moral.
Which makes it good art.
Yes. And so Mark Twain feels to me like he's sort of poking fun at the idea of the fable and the idea of there being one moral takeaway, one message, one way to interpret this story. He's saying, no, that's the point is that you shouldn't do that.
Because if we come away doing that, then we are the cow and the bear and the...
Yeah.
I really like zeroing in on the idea that the cat is the enemy and that it is a cautionary tale about the cat.
Yes. And the cat's the one giving the moral. Yeah. Yeah. Very fun.
Awesome.
Also, you hate cats, so I think that helps.
Well, fantastic. Thank you guys for being here. That was a lot of fun.
This was fun. This is a great little story. Y'all, if you do check out Cam's reading, it's really good. It's really fun.
Yeah, so that's on YouTube.
Spotify.
There'll be a link in the description. It's also on Apple Music and Spotify. If you just search my name, there's that. I read an Edgar Allan Poe story. Tristan and I read an Edgar Allan Poe story that was from 2 years ago now, which is insane.
A fun one. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. I saw the numbers. I was just staring at the screen. It was like 20.
Yeah, I know. I think there's a collective gap of time between 2020 and now.
Yeah.
Due to COVID and all of that. But there is a big smear in my timeline. It's like I can trace everything up to there, and then after March 2020, everything becomes blurry, and all of a sudden it's in November of 2022.
Oh yeah,
it's
I don't know
election
what's
day.
going on. It's weird.
So we are Second Breakfast Pod on Instagram and YouTube now. You get to do little handles on YouTube. So we're Second Breakfast Pod on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. We're Second Breakfast Pod at Gmail if you want to email us. But where can they find us most importantly, Maggie?
Substack, because not only will you find our episodes and every time we post them twice a week, you'll also see little fun preambles and polls and places to comment and sometimes extra content and other videos and leftover notes that didn't make it and emails from listeners. And we do, that's our free tier on Substack.
Yeah.
If you are a paid subscriber for $5 a month, you get even more bonus content, full-length episodes or full-length blog style write-ups for episodes.
Recently, we've been doing horror movies. We did Pearl and Barbarian.
Yeah, so go take a look.
Awesome. All right. And we'll be back on Tuesday Tuesday's fun. Tuesday we're talking about the Blair Witch Project.
We are. That's right.
And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we watched that with my dad, who had never seen it. It was really fun.
We've watched such great movies with him. We watched Blair Witch, Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
The Lighthouse.
The Thing.
Yeah.
You watched The Lighthouse with your dad.
Yeah, it was really fun. Because my dad loves weird movies and horror movies, but my mom
that's the one.
Them. My mom doesn't like them, and so he never has anybody to watch those movies with. So we always have great recommendations, and so we have little movie nights with him. It's fun.
Yeah, I think next up is Rosemary's Baby.
Maybe we should have him on the show.
Episode.
We'll see if my dad wants to be on the show.
That would be fun.
That would be funny.
That would be fun. If you think my dad should be on the show, send us an email. It's secondbreakfastpod.
Ooh, a double plug.
If we get enough paid subscribers signed up between now and I don't know when, then we'll bring my dad on.
Yeah, sure.
That's really vague.
Monetize your father in an episode critiquing capitalism.
Dad, please come on, please. They're gonna pay us.
They'll love it.
No, he probably wouldn't want to, but it'd be fun. All right.
That's going to be the title of the episode. Maggie's dad, in all caps, joins the crew.
Amazing. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.